Welcome to The Explainer. Look, the world is facing a perfect storm of crises. We're talking climate change, food shortages, energy insecurity, you name it. At the recent G20 summit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid out this really ambitious blueprint to not just weather the storm, but to build a more resilient world. So today we're going to break down exactly what that vision is all about. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the big picture, the crises we're all facing. Then we'll dive into the proposed solutions for disaster resilience, a sustainable future, and global food security. And then, and this is the important part, we'll see how it all has to connect. All right, so the whole starting point for this vision is a pretty stark reality. The core idea here is that we're just not facing isolated problems anymore. A drought in one country can spark a food crisis halfway across the world, which then messes up global supply chains. These are massive, interconnected crises, and they demand a truly unified response. So, where do you even start? Well, the first piece of the puzzle is tackling this massive, growing threat of natural disasters. A threat that, by the way, hit a huge portion of the world's population just this past year alone. And that leads us to a really fundamental question posed in the G20 address. This isn't just about getting better at cleaning up after a hurricane or an earthquake. It's about completely changing our global mindset on how we deal with disasters in the first place. And this slide right here really gets to the heart of it. It's about a huge philosophical shift. Instead of just sending aid after a flood, this new development-centric approach asks, hey, how can we build the city in the first place so it doesn't flood? It's about designing our bridges, our power grids, and our communities to be resilient from day one. Okay, so to actually make this vision a reality, 3 concrete initiatives were put on the table. The goal here is to get the money flowing, to share advanced tech like satellite data, especially with the Global South, and to really work together to build a future that is resilient by its very design. Of course, building all this resilient infrastructure naturally leads us to the next massive challenge, right? Energy. How on earth can the world power its growth and lift people out of poverty while also protecting the planet? It's a huge question. And to build that green future, we have to talk about something called critical minerals. Just think of these as the essential ingredients for everything from electric car batteries to wind turbines. Without them, the green transition just stalls. But here's the catch. The supply is limited, and it's often concentrated in just a handful of countries. Right, so instead of just digging and digging and digging, the proposal here is to get smart about it. It introduces a G20 Critical Minerals Circulatory Initiative. This is all about focusing on a circular economy, things like recycling and urban mining, to reduce our dependency on new extraction and ease that pressure on supply chains. And this number right here, this just shows you the sheer ambition of the plan. We're not talking about small incremental changes. During the New Delhi G20 summit, a major pledge was made to triple the world's renewable energy capacity by 2030. But having big goals is one thing, making them happen is another. And achieving this goal comes with a very direct call to action for developed countries to deliver on their promises to provide affordable climate finance and technology, and to do it fast. This brings us to the next link in the chain, and this is something that affects every single one of us: food. A changing climate and these crazy energy prices are putting immense pressure on our global food supply. So the question becomes, how do we protect our farmers? How do we protect our food systems in a world that's getting more and more volatile? The challenges are just piling up, from access to fertilizer and credit to just basic insurance against crop failure. So, as a kind of model for how to do this, the speech points to India's own experience. By operating some of the world's largest food, health, and crop insurance programs, it offers a pretty compelling case study in how you can build security systems that reach hundreds of millions of people. And here's a really cool, specific solution that was highlighted: promoting millets, which are referred to here as Sri Anna. See, while most of the world relies on really water-intensive crops like rice and wheat, millets are totally different. They're incredibly resilient, they can grow in harsh, dry conditions, and they are packed with nutrition. It's a superfood that's good for people and for the planet. Okay, so we've talked about disasters, we've talked about energy, we've talked about food, but here's the real kicker, the key insight of this entire vision. It isn't about solving these problems one by one. It's about understanding how they are all deeply, deeply connected. And this quote right here, this is basically the anchor for the entire G20 address.
The core argument is you can't solve the disaster problem without thinking about energy. And you can't solve the energy problem without thinking about food security. If you treat them as separate issues, you're pretty much bound to fail.
So what does that actually mean? It means you have to build one single global safety net. I mean, think about it, right? You can't have a healthy population without nutritious food. You can't grow that food without sustainable agriculture and a stable climate. And you can't do any of that without resilient infrastructure. They're all just pieces of the same puzzle. All right, so we have this big vision of an interconnected global safety net, which leaves us with one last, really crucial question.
And that leaves us with this final, thought-provoking question. The blueprint has been laid out, right? It's a call for proactive, interconnected, cooperative action. But with all these global crises getting more intense, the real test is whether the world's nations can actually move beyond their silos and work together to build this resilient future before it's too late.